Hey, it's Tuesday afternoon, it's 2 p.m. Hello and welcome to Foundations Live. I'm your host, Paul Smith, and today we're talking all about means testing. Afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's Foundations Live. I know there's a little bit of confusion. There was going to be an LGA webinar this morning, which has been postponed, but this one is, as you can see, still proceeding, and we're talking about means testing today. But a few other bits and pieces just before we get on to that. If those of you who haven't joined us for a Foundations Live before, we're here regularly on a Tuesday afternoon at 2. Foundations is the national body for home improvement agencies and the Disabled Facilities Grant. We are funded by the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Governments. We have a team here to support you with everything DFG related. If you're looking for closed captions and you're currently viewing us on the Foundations website, if you scroll down to the bottom of the page, you'll be able to find the links for LinkedIn, Facebook and YouTube, where you can find the closed captions now. And if you want to share the show or catch it again later, you'll find the recordings there as well. So yeah, if you want to catch up on anything later, it'll stay on the website for a little bit and it'll be on YouTube later. So a couple of bits and pieces just before we get going with means testing. First of all, we're about to send out a survey for those of you that had the DFG scorecard that we sent out last year, and that's a scorecard that we send to every local authority, which kind of reflects to you back the data you submitted as part of your Delta return, which is the annual DFG data return that goes back to government. So we're thinking about how we can improve it for 2026. So we do have a survey. There's a kind of QR code there that you can scan to access the survey. And I think there'll be a link in the text in the chat as well. So if you've found the scorecard useful, want some changes to it or suggestions, then please do take part in the survey. That would be very helpful. And the other thing that we've got coming up is the DFG Champions Roadshows. So we'll be back on the road next month. We'll be visiting Nottingham, Bristol. I'll put Nottingham twice in there, aren't I? We're not visiting Nottingham twice. Manchester, London, and what's the one I've missed out? I'll come back. I can't remember, but we're definitely visiting Nottingham. Oh, Newcastle. I've put Nottingham instead of Newcastle. We'll visit Newcastle on the 26th of February, not Nottingham, then Bristol, then Nottingham, then Manchester, and then London, Newcastle, Manchester, and Nottingham. The waiting lists are now open because all the original tickets have gone, but there's still a few left for Bristol and for London. And towards the end of the session today, I'll be introducing the DFG Quality Mark, which we will go into a lot more detail on during the roadshows. Right, so today is all about means testing and demystifying, hopefully, the means test. So Foundations Live. There we go. Let me turn off the tree. There we go. Right. Introduction to the means test, or hopefully demystifying what it's about, because it's been around for 36 years now. So it's been around a while, and I think it's got a reputation of being something that's generally quite difficult to understand. And to a certain extent that's correct, but some of it has become a little bit simpler because some of the kind of benefits, some of the bits and pieces that it's based on have been withdrawn, and kind of means test hasn't been updated to put anything else back in. And kind of the pension ages for men and women used to be used to be different, which used to make it a bit more complicated as well. But some of that over time has kind of simplified itself a bit. So I thought it'd be an opportunity to start the new year trying to demystify the means test for everybody. So we will have a new guide, which is just in the final stages of being written, all about the means test, which will very much follow the structure of today's session. And we also, many of you have already done them, we do have a series of masterclasses on things like housing assistance policies, works and contractors, decision making, and the role of OT that are also available alongside this. So let's kind of start from basics. So DFG is pretty much what it says on the tin. It's a grant, so you're paying money. It's mandatory, but means tested. So you're paying money for facilities, which are kind of essential aspects for somebody living independently at home who's got a disability. So it's a grant to pay for facilities for somebody who is disabled, and it is a means tested grant. All the details of the grant, all kind of high level details of the grant, are contained within the Housing Grants Construction and Regeneration Act. And it has kind of various bolt-ons. So the means test is detailed in the Housing Renewal Grants Regulations, which were published in 1996 and have had various tweaks to them over the last 30 years. And basically what the means test is made up of is a series of things that you add together and then kind of work out the difference between two different pots of money. So you have things like allowances, housing allowances and premiums, and then you compare that to earnings and pensions and savings. But why is there a means test? So DFG has always been means tested, and kind of language used back in the 90s was probably a little bit different to what we would use today. But how it was described back in the 90s was to kind of focus money on the needy, as it called it, or kind of people who need the help the most. Recognising that public money is limited, so the help tests councils focus support on households with the least financial capacity was how it was framed. And it was created very much based on the housing benefit system, which was already in place. And it gave a detailed way to judge income and savings against household needs. And at the time, it made sense to reuse that structure rather than invent a whole new calculation, because it was familiar to councils, it had national standards, and it offered a way to judge need in a consistent and evidence-based way. But there have been, over the years, there have been a number of reviews of the means test. As early as 1992, ministers reviewed it, and particularly kind of the effect of the means test on disabled applicants. And even kind of back then, it was considered to be overcomplicated. Again, in 2005, it was reviewed and found to be cumbersome and inconsistent. 2011, the BRE did quite a detailed analysis of the means test. So it remained complex and often acted as a disincentive for disabled adults to enter the workforce. And then in 2018, which was kind of the last review of DFG that I was involved with, it recommended aligning the DFG means test with social care eligibility criteria, or as a minimum updating it to include new benefits and local housing allowances. And at this point, we're kind of still waiting for those things to happen. But let's get back to the means test as it exists today then. So who is means tested? So basically, it's adults if they are the relevant person. And this term relevant person is slightly strange concept, because it basically means the disabled adult who needs the adaptation and their partner if they live together. So it would probably make more sense to say relevant person or relevant people, but it's always termed relevant person, even if it's two people. And quite often the relevant person, relevant people, will be different to the applicant. So the applicant is always the owner or tenant of the dwelling. So, for instance, if you had older parents who came to live with grown-up children, the grown-up children as the tenant or owner would be the applicants, but the kind of older parent would be the relevant person, or older parents would be the relevant person come people. So it's always the relevant person / people who are means tested. So some examples of the relevant person. So on the left there, Sam, 52, lives on his own in a flat. Sam is the relevant person. So only his income and savings are checked. In the middle there, there's Dean, needs a stair lift, live with his wife. Dean and his wife are the relevant person. So the test looks at their joint income. And then on the far right there is Mary, older parent moving in with grown-up children. Mary is the relevant person, so she's means tested. Her son is not. So only Mary's income and savings are checked. So who isn't means tested? So since 2008, if the disabled person is a child or a young person under the age of 19, kind of the rule of thumb is that the detail of it is slightly more complicated, but the rule of thumb is, do the parents still get child benefit? And if they do, then the means test doesn't apply. And the other group of people who aren't means tested is where the relevant person / people get any of these benefits. So income-based income support, employment and support allowance, non-contribution based, income-based job seekers allowance, again, not contribution based, the guarantee credit part of pension credit, housing benefit, or universal credit. So that's the list of the people who aren't means tested. So once you've decided if people are means tested, there's a 4-step process to do the calculation. So I'll take you through these 4 steps in a moment, but it's always these 4 steps. So you work out firstly the applicable amount. So this is a formula for how much a household needs, and I'll put that in inverted commas, per week. 2, you then work out the total weekly income. So how much income the household actually has per week. Then you work out the excess income. So you take step 2 minus step 1. And if the household still has some income left, then this is converted into a lump sum, which is the contribution towards a DFG. So we'll go through each of those now in turn and explain how you work out each of those figures. Well, this is hopefully gives you kind of an overview of what it means. So you have your allowances and your premiums. You compare those to earnings, pensions, shares, and savings. And if your earnings, pensions, shares, and savings are more than your kind of applicable amount based on allowances, then you have some sort of contribution to pay. So let's go through the applicable amount. So the applicable amount is basically the weekly budget that the rules say a household needs to live on. It's not based on any actual spending or any actual requirements of the household. It's a standard figure built from 3 parts. So you have Your standard allowances, which are your basic living costs for adults and children. You have premiums, which add extra amounts depending on levels of disability, caring arrangements and family needs. And you have a housing allowance, which is a fixed amount, which is intended to kind of reflect a rent or mortgage cost. And these three are added together to create the total. So starting with your kind of standard allowances, and these are the basic weekly amounts the rules say a person or a couple needs for normal living costs. They're kind of the starting point for the means test. And they're supposed to cover things like food, bills, day-to-day spending. And so they don't reflect at all actual spending in a home. These are notional standard figures. And they're based on whether the relevant person is single or a couple, the age of the relevant person, and the number of children that they have. So, for instance, for a single person of working age, that's equivalent to £60.50 a week. And for somebody of pension age, it's equivalent to £143.80 a week. I will try and keep up with some of the questions in the chat, but I do have an assistant that will help me at the end if we get any particular questions. But the allowances haven't been updated for a number of years, so I'm not quite sure if they're based on the old income support levels or not else. But these are what they've been since 2008, actually. So £60.50 for a single working age person, £143.80 for a pension age single person. For couples of a working age, the allowance is £94.95 a week, and for a pension age couple, it's £215.50 a week. You'll notice that allowances for people of pension age are quite a bit higher than working age. It is evened up a little bit by some of the premiums I will come to later, but you'll see once you get to pension age, then it does assume that you need more to live on per week. For children and young people, then for each child or young person living in the household, you add in an extra £52.59 per week. So that's the standard allowances. So it's based on age and whether you're single or a couple and number of children. The next bit to add in is the housing allowance. So this is a fixed weekly amount that's assumed that it covers rent and mortgage costs. And it's the same for everyone, no matter where they live or what they actually pay. So if you live in City of London, it's exactly the same as it would be right up somewhere on the North Coast. So it's set at £61.30 per week. So what does that mean in practice? Because the housing allowance has been one of the things that's been probably most criticised about the means test over the years. So if you look at the housing allowance at £61.30 per week, which is based on 2008 prices, and if you convert that to monthly, it's kind of £265.63 per month. So it's not a great deal if you think about kind of rents and mortgages. If you allowed for inflation, that would now be £105 per week, which equates to about £453 per month. So even if it had kind of kept pace with inflation, that would be equivalent to a £90,000 mortgage. And I kind of suggest that not many people that still have a £90,000 mortgage. So housing allowance is definitely one of the elements that has been quite consistently criticised it in the means test over the years, but it is a single figure, so we'll talk about it later. But if you wanted to adjust your local means test using your housing assistance policy, the housing allowance figure might be something you might want to come back to. So we've had allowances. The other thing to add, as well as allowances, is premiums. So there are 6 premiums that have slightly difficult or slightly more complicated rules, probably. Certainly more complicated than the allowances to work out which ones apply. So in order there, there's a disability premium, an enhanced disability premium, a severe disability premium, a disabled child or young person premium, a carer premium, and a family premium. So the disability premium is there to recognise extra day-to-day costs faced by disabled adults of working age. So this one doesn't apply to anybody of pension age. So it's adults under state pension age who receive a qualifying disability benefit, such as PIP, DLA, or attendance allowance. An enhanced disability premium again provides further support, and it's again with for adults under state pension age with higher rate disability benefits. Severe disability premium is kind of the next one along, and it's kind of the households with the highest care needs. This one can also apply to pension age people, and it's for disabled adults who receive care-related benefits, live alone, and where no one is paid carer's allowance for them. The next one is the disabled child or young person premium, which it's if there are any children, not necessarily the child who the application is for, because then that wouldn't be means tested. But if there are other children or young people in the household that receive DLA or PIP, then it adds an extra premium into the means test. Carer premium is if one of the people in the household gets carer's allowance, even if they don't receive the payment due to other benefits. And then there's an extra family premium, which is a small extra amount for households with children. There's a slightly different rate for couples and lone parents, and there's a little bit extra if there's a child under 1 in the family. So I think probably the premiums are the most complicated bit of the calculation, but there are kind of 6 of them all together. But kind of once you get into it, they're relatively straightforward, and it mostly depends on the levels of kind of DLA or PIP that one of the relevant people is getting. So do a couple of worked examples for you so you can see how this works in practice. So we've got single person working age, so they get the £60.50 per week allowance, plus the standard housing allowance of £61.30 per week. If they're getting DLA, then they'll probably get the disability premium and the enhanced disability premium, which gives them a total applicable amount of £160.25 per week. So that's the amount that this person is assumed to need per week to live on. If we do another one, so it's a working age couple with 2 children. As a working age couple, they get an allowance of £94.95, then 2 extra £52.59 for having 2 kids. Standard house allowance of £61.30. If they've got DLA, then they'll get £36.85 and £18.15, which gives them an applicable amount of £415.38 per week. So that's again assumed how much they need to live on per week. That's about £1,700 a month. Another example for a pension age couple, they would get an allowance of £215.50 a week add in your housing allowance of £61.30. If they get DLA, potentially might get severe disability of £50.35, give them an applicable amount of £327.15. So that gives you some examples of how the applicable amount is calculated. So it's your allowances plus your housing allowance plus any premiums that apply. So by doing this calculation how much somebody's weekly, how much their applicable amount is. So now you work out what their weekly income actually is. And I'll be talking about discretionary powers in a little while. So a few mentions of that in the chat. So income, the means test looks at money coming into the household each week. So that includes any earnings, so money from work, salary, any pensions, including the state pension, private pensions. Some unearned income might include things like child benefits. Most disability benefits are ignored. And there's also what's called a tariff income from savings. So what counts as earnings then? So in terms of salary, it could be salary if you're kind of PAYE, or it can be, it's a bit more complicated for somebody who's self-employed because you have to look at their income over a period of time. But you're basically looking at what's the average weekly earnings, take-home pay after tax and national insurance. If you're paid monthly, you basically divide it by 4 1/3 to get the weekly amount. If somebody's paying into a pension, you look at that amount and add half of that back in. And if the relevant person is a couple, you're looking at earnings from both of them. But then, and again, this is one of the slightly more complicated bits. You do disregard some of the earnings. So, for instance, if a lone parent is working, then you disregard £25 a week. For disabled workers or carers, you disregard the first £20 a week, and only the highest one of those applies. And for people working 16 hours or more, you can disregard an extra £14.90, which is intended to kind of encourage and support regular work. So you work out how much somebody takes home per week, and you do disregard somewhere between 20 and kind of £40 of that. Pensions are also treated in a similar way. So you kind of regular income, which includes any state pensions, any occupational or private income. The full amount received is counted. There's no special allowance or disregards for pensions. And the weekly amount is added to the earnings to give you your total weekly income. You can also have unearned income, so things like child benefit, maintenance payments. If you've got income such as rent coming in from the property, regular payments from trusts or families are usually counted. So this income is added in full to give you weekly income. But some benefits are ignored as income. These are mostly disability benefits, things like PIP, DLA, attendance allowance, armed forces independence payments, constant attend allowance. You don't include these within the weekly income because they're primarily there to support costs associated with the disability. So earnings, pensions, unearned income, and then you have what's called tariff income from savings. So savings aren't added or kind of assessed as a lump sum to some extent as they are with the social care assessment. Instead, you assume that they produce a kind of small weekly income or pay some interest per week, and this is called tariff income. So anything in total below £6,000 is ignored, but then anything above 6,000 is treated as if it generates a weekly income. So every pound savings over that limit adds a fixed weekly income, and it's slightly less for people over 60 than it is for kind of a pension age than it is for working age people. So to get your total weekly income, you add up earnings, weekly earnings, so money from work, less any disregards. You add in your weekly amount of any pensions. So I suppose you might have the odd case where somebody has earnings and pensions, but it's usually one or the other. You add in certain unearned income and some benefits like child benefit, and then you look at the tariff income from savings. Shares as well. It's not just savings, it could be shares or bonds, but they're treated slightly differently because it does take a bit of effort to cash those in. So you do kind of knock 10% off those. But I'm trying to keep it simple, So when you've got those two figures, so you've got your applicable amount, which is your housing allowance, your allowances, and your premiums. You've got all those added up. You've got your weekly earnings, your weekly pensions, the tariff income from shares and savings. You compare the two, and if your income from earnings, pensions, savings, etc., is more than your applicable amount, so your allowances and premiums added up, then you have a contribution to make. So it's if those are a little bit heavier than the other side. So total income minus applicable amount. If that's more than zero, then you have excess income. So if you've got excess income, how does that convert into a contribution? Because your excess income is a weekly amount, but the adaptations are a one-off cost. So what we're looking to do is turn that weekly amount into a single lump sum. And the idea, well, kind of back in 1989 or 1990, when this was set up, was that you look at how big a loan you could take out with the kind of excess weekly income you've got, and it has kind of a tapering effect, which I'll show you in a minute. So small amounts of excess income lead to a fairly small contribution, but it can ramp up quite quickly. And the other key thing to notice here, that owners and tenants are treated differently, because the rules assume that an owner can get a bigger loan than a tenant. So the same weekly excess income does produce different results. I know kind of it's often said that DFG is tenure neutral, but as you can see, it applies to all tenures, but it does treat them differently. So this is the tapered multiplier, and I was trying to work out kind of the best way to kind of demonstrate how this works, and kind of show you the taper and how it kind of ramps up to as you get excess weekly income. So across the x-axis, across the bottom, are some figures for excess weekly income, and then up the left-hand side there are the contribution that it equates to. So if we had excess weekly income of £75, then for a tenant, which is the kind of lighter green colour, they would have a contribution of about £1,100, £1,200, and an owner for the same excess weekly income would have a contribution of somewhere around £1,900. And if we kind of zoom out a little bit, so got some slightly longer scale of weekly income there. For an excess weekly income of £300, that would equate to a contribution of somewhere around £33,000 for a tenant and closer to £60,000 for an owner. So you can see they're quite different, and it's not quite double, but it's certainly a lot more for an owner than it is for a tenant. So I'll just pick up a couple of the questions we go through. So shared owners are treated as tenants, Verity. So it's always the lower of the two for shared owners. So Cleona, you're asking about an ISA of £10,000. So if that's all they've got, if that's their only savings, you would ignore the first 6,000 of that and just work out the tariff income on £4,000. So PIP and attendance allowance are discounted. They aren't considered. Click the wrong one. So we'll come back to some more questions in a few minutes. So if somebody is listed, Joe, on the land registry as the owner, they're the owner. If they're not listed on the land registry, they almost certainly have a tenants agreement. So you'd be kind of checking first and foremost on the land registry to see if they're the owner. So some other considerations to kind of be aware of. As hopefully you all know, a disabled person can apply for more than one grant in their lifetime, and particularly if there's a change of circumstances. And if they do pay a contribution, say for their first grant, then it is taken into account for the next 10 years if they have any subsequent grants. So that's where it can be beneficial to have what's called a nil grant. So just give you a quick case study on this. A client applied for a DFG in 2019. Based on her income then, she was assessed as having a contribution of £5,000. So a DFG was approved for nil, and she paid £4,000 to have a level excess shower done in her property. Then in 2025, she's assessed as needing a stair lift. Her income has now dropped and her assessed contribution was £4,000. And then as she had already paid a contribution of £4,000 within the last 10 years, her contribution is reduced to nil. So she gets the full cost of that stair lift paid by DFG because she had the nil grant back in 2019. Just to kind of clarify how the contribution works with the upper limit. So again, hopefully, as you know, the DFG has an upper limit of £30,000, which has been was currently being reviewed. So that means that even if the cost of the works is more than £30,000, the grant cannot be more than £30,000 unless council using discretion. But in accordance with the kind of main DFG rules, it can't go above £30,000. And then what that means is any contribution is taken off the grant maximum, not the total cost of the work. So the contribution reduces the grant. So for example, if the works cost £40,000 and the contribution is £5,000, the £5,000 comes off £30,000. So the grant is £25,000, not £35,000. Hope makes sense. Just notice, Francisca, you'd said that shared owners are treated as property owners. That's not correct. Just to flash that on the screen, shared owners are definitely tenants. Happy to share the details with you afterwards, but if anybody's unsure, shared owners are definitely treated as tenants. So discretion, and I saw that some of you were discussing this earlier. So every local authority has the discretion to change the means test that they use locally by setting out the details in an approved and published housing assistance policy. And that you can pretty much do what you want with that, as long as it's not stricter or less advantageous than the standard means test. So, as I said at the start, the Act, Housing Grants Construction and Regeneration Act, covers the main rules. The means test itself is detailed within the Housing Renewal Grants regulations from 1996. And for instance, the term relevant person isn't at all mentioned in the Act. The kind of definition of relevant person, for example, is in those regulations. You can have there's other kind of charges and things that also link in with it. But what you can do with a housing assistance policy is add in your own rules or your own local variations for things like the means test and the upper limit. So if we look at the Delta returns or the DFG performance data that 99% of local authorities submitted last year, and we look at all the DFGs approved in 2024-25, you can see that the vast majority didn't pay a contribution. So all this stuff we've just gone through in terms of working out a contribution applied to a very small proportion of the people who got a DFG. And this has kind of been the case since the grant was introduced, and then the idea was that it aimed the grant at people who financially needed it the most. So this was kind of from the report that was done in 2011 that said of all the people that might need a DFG, 50% wouldn't be eligible through the means test, 44% will get a full grant, and just that kind of 6% or so in the middle would make some sort of contribution. So what are your kind of options if you do want to use your discretion? Some local authorities took the option to completely do away with means testing. So that was kind of one end of the spectrum, and at the other end of the spectrum is kind of staying with the standard means test. But there are some other options in between. So some remove the means test or kind of passport through people through the means test for certain types of adaptations like stair lifts, certain conditions like motor neurone disease. Quite a common one is or was, I think it's becoming less common now as demand is increasing, but adaptations below a certain value, 5,000 was fairly common 2 or 3 years ago. And some local authorities have looked at mirroring what happens with the social care financial assessment and focusing DFG or kind of DFG funds and grants on people that based on their savings. So, for example, people who have less than 23,500. Another approach is to disregard the first part of the contribution. So, for instance, if somebody had a £10,000 contribution, you disregard the first 5,000 of it. I think, as somebody mentioned elsewhere in the chat, some people use council tax reduction as a kind of passporting benefit, which isn't officially part of the main means test, but some people do use that. And as I was kind of talking about the housing allowance earlier, that is kind of one figure within the means test, and it is quite possible to reconfigure the calculator so that you adjust it to a housing allowance. You might use the local housing allowance figure, for example, but that is another perhaps slightly fairer way of doing it as well. The other thing to flag in terms of means testing is that if the landlord makes the application for the grant rather than the tenant, then the idea is that the DFG is funding improvements of the accessibility of the dwelling. Then you'll have as local authority nomination arrangements for future tenants as well. So local authority can agree an appropriate level of funding with the landlord, but the kind of the means test, as you've seen it, doesn't then apply. With retained council housing, so as I was offered to speak at for a group of tenants and tell them about DFGs earlier this week, and somebody said, well, they're council tenants, so they're not eligible, but of course they are. DFG applies to council tenants just as it applies to housing association tenants and private tenants and owner occupiers. The difference is that the adaptations are funded from the housing revenue account. But when we did a survey a couple of years ago, we did find that 90% of councils didn't means test their own tenants and just carried out the adaptations directly, which I think is where that confusion's comes from. But tenants do retain the right to apply for a DFG if they wanted to. So that's a run through of what the means test, how the means test works, how it operates, how the various bits and pieces work. Hopefully, you've kind of found that useful. It's demystified it, hopefully, to a certain extent. And what I'm going to do now is, if I stop sharing that one and I share, hopefully, something else. If I share this one, right? So this is our means test calculator. So we've had a version of it on our website for I think about 5 years now. It's used hundreds of times every month. We've done a slightly different version. We've actually done two slightly different versions. One, we've kind of put a bit more into the background, so it makes it easier for members of the public. But we've also been developing this one that follows through the same logic that I've just talked you through, but is meant more for kind of caseworkers and other people doing the means test for a local authority. So if I make that a little bit bigger, so hopefully you can see it a bit better. There we go. So to start with, it asks the same questions that we had at the start. So if the disabled person or their partner, which is the relevant person or people, receive any of the following benefits, then the means test doesn't apply, and it doesn't apply if it's a child or a young person. So for the purposes of this, let's click no so we can see the rest of the calculation. So first of all, we'll add in the housing allowance. So this is the £61.30 that everybody gets per week regardless. And then this is the screen where you add in the personal allowances. So you pick which one of these applies. So let's say it's a single person, aged 25 to 65, single parent with 2 children. So it gives an applicable amount of £226.98 a week before we add in the premiums. So disability premiums rely on getting various types of disability benefit. So let's assume this person is single, so they live alone. They get DLA, so we'll add in the disability premium, and let's say they get higher rate care of DLA as well again, so they're living alone, so we can add in single rate. So also if they live alone, get DLA, middle or high, and if that nobody gets carers allowance for looking after them, we could add in the severe disability premium. So that's taken them up to £315.78. So you add in disabled child or young person premium if there's any young people in the household receiving DLA. Let's kind of assume there isn't. We'll assume the relevant person isn't getting carer's allowance, but we can add in the family premium as there's children in the house, not a child under 1. So this is where we can then add in their income. So let's say they get £300 per week and maybe make £15 pension contribution. Can add in another salary there if there was. Disabled is disabled person, lone parent. Lone parent one is slightly higher than disabled person one, so we'll keep the lone parent one. And so let's say they're working 16 hours or more, so it takes their income slightly down. And what we're developing here is that you could add files, evidence. If you're using this on your phone, you could click on it and it would kind of take a photo of the evidence that you could take back to the office. Probably not any pensions for this one, but I can't remember the exact figures for child benefit, but let's say it's kind of £50 a week, and maybe they get £50 a week from something else. So that all adds in. So I've got an applicable amount of £332.53. So far their income is £387. Maybe they're somebody mentioned earlier, didn't they, having £10,000 in an ISA? So let's pop that in there. Actually, not a person over 60. So you can see £10,000. You ignore the first 6,000. So it looks at how much kind of interest or income you would get based on £4,000, and it adds in £16 a week to your total income. So then the final thing to do is kind of it takes away applicable amount from the total income, gives you an excess income of £71.07, and then you just choose whether it's an owner, occupier, or a tenant. So if it's a tenant, gives you a contribution of £1,040. If it was an owner occupier, it'd be £1,775. So that's kind of our new calculator that is slightly different to the one on both the Foundation's website and Adapt My Home. And what we'd like to do is do a bit of testing with it. So if you're already somebody who does means tests and is interested in that, please do drop us a line, and it's free to use, and we'll be putting a copy of that new version on the website, and hopefully be able to make use of it. We're also developing a second version, which is for members of the public to use, which does more of the thinking and kind of has more logic built into in the background, which makes it quite a lot more complicated in the background, but slightly easier in the foreground. So if you're interested in that, please do get in touch. But the other thing that we've developed, as I was kind of saying, we're trying to demystify the means test, and so we've got the video, we've got the slides that we shared today. We've got the new version of the calculator, which hopefully makes it a little bit easier to use as well. The other thing that we've done with that version of the calculator is we've made it so that if you wanted to adjust something like the housing allowance or something else within the calculation to have your own local version, that's easier to do now with the new version. But the other thing that we've been looking at is, as I said at the start, that this kind of applies for probably 98% of the cases you would look at, but there are some that are a bit more complicated, and you might have different kind of fairly rare benefits, or you'll know if you've done this for a while, there's always kind of random things that come up. So what we've tried to do is put together, I'm going to find the right thing to share again. What we've put together is an AI system that we've fed it all the legislation, all the guidance we can find, and told it don't go kind of imagining anything, and just give us answers based on what we've told you. So if anybody wants to pop a question about means testing in the chat, we'll give it a go. We'll test it out, see how well it answers the question. So let's have a look. So have we got any questions? Any questions here that we could use for the Let's have a look at this one. What about a savings bond that has a life policy? And I haven't tried this one before, so we're seeing. Do you treat So just having a think. So these are some of the things that we want to test out with it. And as anybody who knows that's used a bit of AI, sometimes it can be a little bit interesting in terms of some of the stuff it comes up with. But the idea with this one, it doesn't go out to the internet to try anything. It just So Danielle asking, is it acceptable to our service users to contact their local council so being acceptable for a DFG prior to an OT? I think it's certainly there's a lot of areas that would refer people to check. Of course, it's not just a DFG that somebody might be going to social services for, but certainly giving people information and advice in a timely way is always very helpful. But if anybody would like to have a play with the AI bot and have a go with it, please do let us know. And let's have a look. See what it says about armed forces pensions then. And it's only trained on things that we've told it. So if we haven't told it about armed forces pensions, I can't remember if we've been given it, then it may give up something different. There you go, treat it differently. So it looks like there is some detail in the information we've given it that sets that out. So if you'd like to play with that, then please do let us know. Again, we'd like to test it out and see if it works. So hopefully you found that useful, and we'll be developing the web page and the guide for means testing. We'll include the new version of the calculator. If you want your own version for local use, then come and talk to us about that, and we might be able to work that out with you. And if you'd like to test out the AI bot and see if it gives you the right answers, then that would be fantastic as well. So that was all I was going to do on means testing for today. What I wanted to do just before we finish for the afternoon, I'm going to lie down after spending an hour talking about means testing, is talk about the DFG Quality Mark, which we will be introducing in full at the upcoming roadshows. So, as with anything, if you kind of look at anything from A-level results to kind of football matches to DFG performance, they always follow a normal distribution. That's kind of something a bit like this. So you kind of get half or kind of above median that's kind of below average. Then you get another half that kind of by definition above average, and you always get kind of 10 to 20% that are kind of performing much better than the rest. You always get kind of 10 to 20% that are performing much poorer than the rest, and then the other kind of 60 odd percent are somewhere in the middle, and that kind of applies to pretty much anything, which is why it's called the normal distribution. And if you look at DFG data that comes in through the Delta survey, it's no different. So, for instance, if we looked at how much of their allocation local authorities were spending, then this is the kind of graph you get. So from a few that aren't spending very much of it, a few that are spending kind of 150% plus of it, and most are kind of somewhere in the middle. And equally with delivery time, so looking at stages 2, 3, and 4 of the DFG process. So after the kind of the OT assessment through to completion of works, the distribution of that is from kind of less than 100 days to over 500 days. The median is 223 days, and based on the good practice guidance, it kind of for most cases it talks about 130 days. You can see that just under kind of 20% of local authorities are regularly hitting that target in terms of performance, which kind of shows you that kind of following the normal distribution route. Some local authorities are kind of really spending all the money, really doing really well, doing things quickly. There are some that are struggling to spend all the money and are kind of taking what's that, kind of 2 years on average to get jobs done, and most are somewhere in the middle around this kind of 223 working days, where it gets about a year. So what we've been working on developing is the DFG Quality Mark, to put together a national standard for how DFGs are kind of delivered through the system. And the idea is that we're going to launch this dedicated quality mark, and I'm going to talk through what it is, how it works, how it will help local authorities, providers and residents, how we're going to get involved, or how you can get involved with the consultation and kind of pilot phases of this, and how we can support you on the journey. And the idea is to build a consistent, trusted and high quality DFG service across the country. So we're launching it in kind of recognition that the profile of DFG is continuing to increase. Hopefully you saw the good news over the weekend that the Minister for State for Health and Social Care announced an additional £50 million for DFGs in this current financial year. So that money will be coming out, and details of the actual allocations from MHCLG very, very shortly. But as you can see, I think that's the third time in 4 years additional funding has been found within year, as well as regular increases to the total pot as well. So I think that shows that it's an important government policy, but with that come expectations on speed and kind of quality of delivery. And as I've shown you on those kind of previous couple of charts, that there is quite a wide variation between areas that are performing really, really well, and then the kind of few areas that are struggling a bit with that delivery. And the idea is that disabled people across the country should have a fairly more fair and consistent service everywhere. So we've been developing this national standard for DFG services, and at this point it focuses on stages 2 to 4 of the process. So that's after the OT assessment in kind of the typical process, so that it applies equally to all 294 housing authorities. And kind of the plan is that once local government reorganisation has settled and we have unitary authorities across the country, that we can then more easily incorporate kind of stage 1 within that standard. So for high performers, it will give a badge that recognises the kind of quality of the service that they're providing. And for others, whether they're kind of in the middle or further down the kind of performance chart, the idea is it gives you kind of a clear view of what needs improving, what to prioritise in terms of change, and alongside that will be ongoing support from foundations to do that. And it's been designed and or developed. It's got 75 elements in it, 75 things that we think a strong DFG service will include, based on 8 themes. And we try to keep the language simple. We try to keep it clear and practical. And for each one, we've tried to make it so that it's quite objective in terms of the way that you can assess it. So it's something that you do or something that you don't. It's not, hopefully not kind of a grey thing where you kind of have to think, well, do I or don't I? We try to make it quite objective as we go through it. So what we're going to do at the roadshow, we've made packs of cards. So each card has one of the 75 requirements of means test. Sorry, not the means test. I've got means test on the brain now. So one of the 75 requirements of the quality mark. And these are just kind of a sample of them. And you see they cover 8 different areas. So kind of from public information, contractors and procurement, through agency services, whether you've got a housing assistance policy, for example. And each one is either a must do, a should do, or a could do. So you can help with prioritisation. And the idea is that each card then has the description separately. So you can judge each card on its own merits, and kind of on the table in front of you start to work out which ones you do, which ones you don't do, and then kind of prioritise them as must do, should do's, or could do's. So we think that's quite a neat way to kind of understand what each of the requirements are, and we're going to be looking for kind of feedback on whether we've got the right requirements, whether they're at the right level in terms of must do, should do, and could do, and also we're kind of then going to be moving on to thinking about what evidence would we ask for if you wanted to kind of get the badge certified. So as part of the roadshows, we'll be reviewing the framework, testing the 75 elements, getting your feedback, and helping to shape the next version that will then be kind of piloted with some kind of pilot sites across the country, hopefully later this year. So everybody that comes to one of the roadshows will receive a pack of these cards to help us with that consultation. And as I say, we'll also be looking for a small group of councils to test the framework. Most, I think, at that stage will be around looking at what the evidence requirements are, so we can make it as kind of least onerous as possible in terms of submitting the evidence, and we can then also kind of help update the guidance on how it will be used. So if you haven't already, please do come along to, or if you haven't booked a ticket for the roadshow yet, and I say there's a few left, particularly for Bristol and London, and we've got we always have a waiting list and try and release as many tickets as we can. So come to the roadshow, play with the cards, share your views, and consider joining the pilot. And we're kind of here for you all the way in terms of our regional advisors, training, consultancy, tools and guidance, and ongoing improvement and support. So I think we've covered a lot there today, haven't we? I think this is the Foundations Live where I've spoke the most ever. So hopefully you found that useful. The recording will be on YouTube. Well, you can replay this on YouTube at any point, and then we'll be cutting it up into, or Dan will be cutting up into bits, into bite-sized chunks, so you can review it afterwards. But the other thing I just wanted to add, as we're kind of now into 2026, and we've got more events coming up this year than we've ever had before, and a kind of a key part of the events and the learning and kind of sharing good practice is you guys. It's you kind of coming and speaking, presenting, sharing what you do in your local authorities on a day-to-day basis, and sometimes you might think that everybody else is doing the same, but they're almost certainly not. So if you would like to come and speak at a roadshow, at a Foundations Live, or some of the other events that we're doing, or maybe kind of one of our network meetings, if you wanted to start at something a little bit smaller, then please do get in touch, because it makes a big difference. I think sometimes hearing from other people that are doing the same job as you is more impactful than me telling you something. So please do attend, and if you can pluck up the courage to come and speak, then it makes a real difference, and we really appreciate it. And yeah, I'm sure you'd be very pleased to know I've written a song about it. So we'll finish today's Roadshow Live with a sneak preview of one of the songs from the new album that will be out for the upcoming roadshows, and it's all about you coming to speak at the upcoming roadshows. Hope to see you there.
Everyone's got a story to tell, a lesson learned, a moment you know so well. Don't keep it hidden, don't lock it away. The world needs your voice today. Step on up, don't be afraid. Every word is a path you've made. Come and speak, we wanna hear. Come and speak, your voice is clear. Come and speak, tell us how. Come and speak, show us now. Come and speak and tell the world what you're all about. You've got wisdom, you've got fire inside. What you discover could change someone's life. It's not about perfect, it's not about fame, it's about lifting up every name. Step on up, don't hold it back. What you share is the thing we lack. Come and speak, we wanna hear. Come and speak, your voice is clear. Come and speak, tell us how. Come and speak, show us now. Come and speak and tell the world what you're all about. Your voice could be the spark tonight. Your words would set a heart alight. Every story makes us strong. Every voice belongs. Come and speak, we wanna hear. Come and speak, your voice is clear. Come